Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Sit Around the Fire. You know this as the podcast where we hold space to have real, unfiltered conversations about mental health, personal growth, and what it actually takes to heal and show up fully in your own life. I'm your host, Ashley Dillard, therapist, hypnotherapist, and a former first responder. And this podcast is here to challenge the way that you think, help you reconnect with yourself, and remind you that transformation is absolutely always possible. Today, I am very excited to welcome into the show Mr. Mark Blacknell, who we've already had a really good conversation and we decided to start recording, so we stopped talking. But I'm excited to welcome into the show Mark.
Yes, hi. Thanks for having me. Yeah, the conversation was great. So where were we?
Yeah, exactly. Pick up where we left off. Well, my number one question I always start with when I host guests on the show is for that person who's listening to our conversation today and joining us, what's the number one thing that you really want them to walk away with?
Well, I think I'll set it up for both of us based on the previous conversation. I don't think you and I have anything to sell. I don't think we're here today to sell anything, which in today's day and age may be rare. So whatever we say is kind of coming from the heart. So this is a safe space today, folks, and hopefully you find something we say helpful, but I promise that I'll try to come from the most sincere and authentic and honest place that I can today. So that would be my message up front, because if we're looking over our shoulder and we're kind of like, what's this person's angle? Are they trying to convince me of something? Are they trying to sell me something? We kind of are always cautious, looking over our shoulder. So today it's just like a bunch of people hanging out by the fire, right?
Yes.
without the booze or the
Right.
or the weed.
True. Maybe a good song or so, a good little guitar song here and there, but no booze or weed.
I have a guitar and I have a
Nice.
mandolin if you're interested.
Ooh, nice. I like it. No, I'm really excited. When I was doing my back research on you and you came across the platform, I was really intrigued by not only your story, but just kind of the work that you're doing. But we also have to start from the beginning. So give us a little picture of a snapshot of who you are, kind of what your life has been like, because I think there's a lot of power in the journey that you walked so far and the story that you have, and that's kind of the essence of the podcast as is. So tell us a little bit about what your journey has been like so far.
Well, yo, Ashley, I'm from Philly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I bleed Eagles green. So I'm still a football fan, and a Philadelphia sports fan. It's so funny. Some of my students and other people, they're like, how could you still watch sports? It's so commercialized and it's violent. And I'm like, I'm from Philly. I'm not giving up sports. I'm just not going to give them up. So I'm a little older. I grew up in the 70s, for real. And it was pretty tough where I grew up. I don't know if it was like that for everybody, but it was pretty tough for me. There were a lot of bullies and the parents worked, and my dad worked at a factory, so he was exhausted all the time. He worked like the midnight to 8 shift at one point, I remember. And my mother worked, so we were latchkey kids, and we pretty much I could ride my bike to Philly, and I was pretty free, but you were exposed to quite a few things when you're free like that. I just remember I had to fight a lot or try to hide from the bullies. And I guess maybe I turned into a little bit of a bully, to protect myself. So it was kind of working class, tough. Everything was based on, my mother, from the time I could remember, she was worried about what job I was going to have. what career are you going to have? And then my father used to say, "You're so lazy, you'll be lucky to be a see that trash guy out there, Big Dan, the shit can man." That was his name. He had a shirt that said Big Dan, the shit can man. Dan, if you're out there.
Yeah, we send you some love, Dan.
Yeah,
Thanks for doing that work.
Dan, you were an inspiration, but my father used to say, "You'll be lucky to have Big Dan's job. You're so lazy." My childhood was not, it was a little crazy at times. And working class, what job are you going to have? Back then, the whole identity was, it was all materialism. It really was, I would say. And the parents would drink and have these big parties. Anyway, but I feel lucky, So that paints a little bit of a picture. And I wasn't really into school. So my mother sent me to carpentry school. So half of the day I went to Votech because Uncle Larry in the union at Boeing was going to get me into the carpenters union, even though I had zero interest in carpentry and failed the union exam on purpose. Sorry, Mom. So I never became a union carpenter, luckily, And so I got a job after high school with the Teamsters Union under Jimmy Hoffa Jr. He was the president of the Teamsters. And there were like guys I worked with, like named Little Sween and his father, Big Sween. And I kind of got involved in, back then, gambling wasn't legal like it is today, which I think is very dangerous, by the way, for our listeners, especially young men. Gambling on sports, it can become a serious addiction. But I was on the other end. I was the one taking the bets. Like I was like the app in the old days. And
Nice.
I worked at this gas station at night to use their telephone, so the police didn't tap my phone. And I worked my way up the ranks, and I was part of Big Sween's Lamplighter Tavern crew. And I didn't really understand what I was getting into. So it was the Irish mob and who were working in cahoots with the Italian mob. I didn't really put two and two together back then. Like my members of my family were always talking about this guy, Chicky Narducci, who got whacked for blowing up uh, the chicken man, Testa. But anyway, that's another story. So I hope I'm painting a picture for you of what
Yes.
my life was like.
Yes,
There
I
were like
love it.
there were cigarettes off the back of trucks and fake inspection stickers for your car. And there was Chicky Narducci and there was Big Sween. And there was Mr. Smith, my mentor, who was the bookie in my neighborhood who kind of showed me the ropes. He woke up with a Bloody Mary every morning.
Wow.
And we used to go golfing.
Nice.
Anyway, so this is my big poker games with arguments, when I was little. They used to throw money under the table, and in the morning the kids would go and pick it all up. Now, that was it. And then to get away from the stress of the illegal activities and the sense that perhaps I would be what we call pinched, arrested,
Mhm.
arrested, because I was low level. They always go after the low level people, to find out who the higher level people are. To get away from all that stress, I did a really reasonable thing. I joined the Marines.
Nice.
That really helped with my stress level.
Of course.
Yeah, so I spent 4 hard years, pretty much all of them away, deployed. I was in I didn't just wanna join the Marines, I wanted to join the Marines of the Marines. And, let's just say I came out, messed up. Very messed up. Alcoholic, PTSD, big time, panic attacks, depression, all that stuff. And I kind of walked through life, got all the way up to a master's degree. And um, ended up working for the governor of Pennsylvania, believe it or not. He was the mayor of Philadelphia. His name was Ed Rendell. And my family kind of, my stepmother particularly, she was a supporter of his campaign. So when he got elected, I had just gotten a master's degree and I was already working as a park ranger, in the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. So the timing was like perfect. So I ended up working as an appointed policymaker for conservation purposes for the governor. And my life was really headed down. I was still drinking. I was unhealthy. I was probably about 40 or 50 pounds heavier than I am now. I had like high blood pressure, high cholesterol. I was still drinking. I was still having all those issues, just like pushing them aside and, pushing through as a Marine. And then I did something really wild, which changed my life completely about 20 years ago. I came home from work with my beer and my lazy chair, with my big belly. Trying to see the TV. Nothing wrong with a big belly, but I'm just saying uh, I had to see over my belly to watch. Anyway, and I was like channel surfing, all depressed, and oh god, what do I got to do at work tomorrow? And I came across this PBS nature show, and it was this Israeli guy, this ornithologist, bringing Jewish and Palestinian kids together and teaching them about birds and basically saying that birds fly from Palestine to Israel to Iran to Syria to Lebanon, back down to Israel, and they don't see any boundaries. And that human beings create these boundaries, not nature, not our nature. And if we follow our nature, we could begin to see that maybe these boundaries are invented and not necessary. So I was like, whoa, my God, now that's meaningful work. So I went into work the next day and I told this old guy, Jim Brett, he's like a legend throughout the world in conservation circles. He had this nice, cushy job with the governor. And I said, Jim, I saw this documentary last night on PBS about this Israeli ornithologist. And he said, stop. His name's Yossi Leshem, and he's one of my best friends. And I was like, yes. He's like, hold on. He pulled out his little black book, you know.
Uh-huh.
Back then it was black books and he found him and he dialed his phone. And then he was like, hey, Yossi, it's Jim. Hold on. This kid wants to talk to you. And he handed me the phone. He said, tell him what you just told me.
Whoa.
So I was like, I was so inspired. My God. He's like, come work for me. Like you have to understand Israelis. They're like, the Middle East, you have to understand the Middle East. Like people don't really they don't really show you their mind. It's kind of like a lot of double talk. It's part of the culture. It's pretty cool once you get the hang of it, but he didn't really mean I should come work for him. But Jim Brett was there and he was like, he didn't mean that, but you should hold him up to it. You should go work for him. And I'm like, I can't leave my job. I can't leave. At the time I was married. I can't leave my family, my pension. He's like, dude, you're 30. What are you, 34, 35? I said, yeah. He's like, sure you can. He's like, invite your wife to go with you, but go. And I was like, whew. Damn it if I didn't go. But my ex, she was my wife. She said, no way. But she was cool. She was like, I understand you have wanderlust. You do what you got to do. I completely understand that this is not the life for you, Mark. So she was like, really, I thank her to this day. But I went and Yossi, before I went, I called Yossi. I said, I'm coming. And he's like, when? And I said, in January. He's like, well, what are you going to do? I don't have any open jobs right now. And I said, Yossi, I'm going to make a documentary on people in the region on both sides, Arab, Jewish, who kind of think like you do, who are progressive thinkers, and are into peace. And he's like, well, I can't pay you for that. And I said, well, can you get me free rooms, free food? Because they have all these nature centers, Society for the Protection of Nature, like these little lodges all over the country. So I said, "And can you get me all the permits I need, to go wherever I want?" And he was like, "I can do that. Yeah." So I went to the like UCLA, NYU, Boston U, like the leading film schools. And I just like wrote the deans and was like, "Hey, I'm going to Israel. You have, I need a camera person. I'm willing to pay for their trip, free room, free board, you know." And this kid, I did all these interviews with all these younger people who wanted to go, filmmakers. And I chose this kid from Boston U, and we took off to Israel. And I ended up staying there for 2 years. It was only
Wow.
supposed to be 3 months. going through going through a war there as a civilian, which was interesting, and filming it. And the movie came out pretty nice, and I won some awards and got to travel. But the message behind all this is it was in Israel where I learned meditation for the first time. It was Vipassana meditation, and I learned that after they do their mandatory service, because it's mandatory, a lot of the Israelis, they want out. They want nothing to do with what's going on there. So they go to India, they go to Thailand, they start practicing Eastern religion, and then they bring it home. So I was like, why are all these people meditating on the
Yeah,
kibbutz? This is weird. Like I expected, you know, what we view Israel as, kind
right.
of the promised land, Judaism, Christianity, and here it was like people meditating. So that's kind of when I was exposed to it, and I meditated in some really cool places, like on the cliff where Jesus was tempted by the devil and stuff like that. Which, by the way, a weird thing happened when I was doing that. This big crow came and landed right next to me, and the camera guy was filming the whole thing.
Whoa.
And when I came down from the cliff, it was this Bedouin guy who was like, "Yeah, that's where Jesus was tempted. It was in the Judean desert." He's like, "That's the spot." So I went up there, and that's in the movie. But anyway, so meditation kind of got planted in my head. Now, when I was in Israel, I cashed in my pension to go to Israel and make this film, and the IRS found me, believe it or not, and I owed them like at least 20 grand because I cashed in my pension early and didn't pay tax. And my student loan deferment was up. So I owed like $50,000 in student loans. So I was like, I gotta get a job back in the States. So I ended up in Maui with the guy from Leadville, Kurt Flatiger, at Haleakala National Park. And at that time, I was doing like a form of Kabbalistic meditation. I was really into mystical Judaism. And I was kind of turned off by the New Age crowd in Maui, even the Buddhist crowd. It was a lot of, like we were talking about earlier, it wasn't serving underserved communities. It was a lot of privilege and judgment and very strange things like getting hooked up to chakra machines. And everybody was worried that the Mayan calendar was ending and the world was going to end, and people eating nothing but algae and getting scurvy. And I was just really turned off to
Yeah.
meditation altogether. I was
Wow.
like a kid from Philly, Marines, who just came back from the kibbutz and making it through a war there. I was like, oh man, I don't want anything to do with any of this. But I got involved in like the rich and famous crowd of Maui. I lived in this farmhouse and I was surrounded by very wealthy and famous people. And I kind of was getting caught up in all that, to be honest. So I had to go.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
And it was a I mean, sometimes I regret it, but not so much anymore. Moving from Maui to Florida. Woo, conservative Florida. It was a big shock. Here I come, I roll in, I'm like a hippie, and I'm working for the federal government. I'll never forget the first day I walked into this office and I suddenly became the supervisor of 5 middle-aged women.
Ooh. fun.
Here's hippie Mark. Hey, how you doing, man? They were like, it looked like they saw a ghost. Like, this is my boss. Oh my gosh.
My gosh.
Anyway, so I kind of bugged this guy who I really, really respected. At the time, he was in his early, well, maybe mid 60s to late 60s. And I just kept bugging this guy. Like, I picked a guy that I had always respected because you see him in documentaries, you see, he's a writer and stuff like that. And I just always respected this guy. So I just kept bugging him. And he, through email and asking him questions. And, I just kept bugging him and bugging him and bugging him because in his book, he bugged somebody when he was young. So he kind of taught me how to do it. And eventually he kept saying, read this book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Suzuki Roshi. This is a Soto Zen teacher who passed away in 71. He's like, I know you're turned off to all this, but this guy's the real deal. And I read like 3 or 4 pages of the book. And basically the dude was saying like, don't wait, just start meditating. You're ready to do it. I'm no better than you. Put the book down. He didn't even write a book. It was like his students. He took his lectures after he passed away. And it basically just kept saying, put the book down, put this down. I'm talking because I appreciate meditation, silent Zazen practice, and you're ready. Just do it. There's not much to talk about, which is what my book, I kind of took that format. Just put it down, just meditate. And I just started doing it. Like first on my lunch break on a bench in the park, and then like I would get pillows and a yoga mat and do it at home. I just started doing it. Then I kept bothering this guy I respected. And finally, after a few years, he became my teacher and I became part of a Sangha and all of that. And, I got ordained. I made a bodhisattva vow first, which is kind of like, I agree to stop focusing on me so much and help others as much as I can is basically what a bodhisattva vow is. And then I was ordained as an entrusted layperson, it's called. It's kind of like a street priest, like you're pretty serious, but you're on the street. And because I'm from Florida and I'm not from Northern California or Crestone, or places like that, bringing my meditation off the mat, and into my community, it took some pretty cool, it evolved in pretty cool ways to the point where I was no longer using Buddhist terms. I was just using layman terms because most of the people around here, they're senior citizens and they're Christians. So if I was talking about, Buddha nature and might not have really helped anyone. So just it organically developed all these things I started doing in my community. And that got me in hot water with the establishment. And now I'm free. And I realized that, even though Soto Zen, I would say, is probably the least religious religion and the least cult-like religion, and there wasn't any money involved, it was still religion. And I was always thinking, what will they think? What will the teacher think? What will his Dharma heir think? And it really wasn't a good feeling. And they kind of publicly humiliated me at times. And finally I said enough and just cut myself loose from all that. And here I am.
Nice. Yes. Wow. I mean, I listening to the first part of your story, I was like, this sounds like a movie I've seen before,
That's what
featuring. It just made me think of a bunch of old mobster movies that it was awesome.
Well,
So,
believe me, when I watch them, I'm like, it's nostalgic.
yeah. Yeah, like we need Robert De Niro and all those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't that involved in it and I got out. In fact, when I joined the Marines, I told Big Sween in the Lamplighter Tavern in his booth with his crew, I was like, Sween, I got some news. And he said, what? I said, I'm joining the Marine Corps. And he was like, great, great. He's like, serve your country. He's like, and when you get back, come see me, man. He's
Right.
thinking Marine coming
Yep.
back. Perfect.
Yep.
He could collect.
Yep. Oh my gosh. Wow.
But yeah, so I got out and I never went back. And the
Yeah.
same thing happened with a certain outlaw biker gang. When I got out of the Marines, kind of my dream that my hometown was right next to the headquarters of a certain outlaw biker gang in Pennsylvania, Marcus Hook, Pennsylvania. Some people will know who that gang is, but I'm not mentioning them. We would see these guys when I was little. They would roll through town and they always had the best looking women and they just looked wild, man. And they would roar through and everybody would stop. And all the kids like thought they were like amazing, these guys. So it always was in the back of my mind. That's how wild I am.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got out of the Marines, my friend introduced me. And I had this crazy idea that I would go to law school and I would become their attorney and be part of the group. And the vice president, who was a Marine, Vietnam Marine, he kind of digged it. So I hung out with them and they did what's called a gut check. I basically stayed up 2 days straight on meth and coke drinking.
Wow. Nice. Wow.
And, to be honest, it felt like I was in hell. I'm wild, but that was too wild for me, and I never went back
Mm-hmm.
to hanging out with them again. That kinda ended my dream, you know? And then I didn't become a lawyer. This is a whole 'nother story, but my friend, toured with the Dead, and, it was just him and I. This is in the book. It was just him and I in the fraternity house. Like it was Good Friday. Everyone had gone home from Easter and he was listening to the Dead. And I was like, this band sucks, man. Could you turn it off? And he's like, you don't understand the Dead because you never did acid. And at the time, I was reading Socrates and I was reading ancient Greek philosophy. And Socrates had this reputation where he could like take copious amount of drugs and alcohol, but he remained control. That's how he won a lot of arguments in the forum. So I thought I could do that. So anyway, he said, you don't understand the Dead because you never did acid. And I was like, hook me up. You got it, man. He's like, oh yeah, I'm going to break out the private stock for you, dude. I'm like, okay. So first hit, me being a Marine, second hit, third hit, I think it was 4 hits to be honest. But the bottom line is I was taken away from the planet Earth for 24 straight hours.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine.
In front of this council of elders and all this crazy stuff. And then the dark force tried to get me to go on the horse. And it was just, and all these weird formulas were like,
Whoa.
anyway, 24 straight hours. And I no longer wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I moved out in the middle of the forest in a little cabin with the guy who gave me acid. And we lived there for 2 years. We were surrounded by books and we would like debate. And I remember this one time, I was still in college, but there was this beautiful woman named Carla Kostelek from from Pittsburgh. And I'm like, I kind of think Carla likes me, and we started hitting it off kind of. And then I was like, hey, you want to go to my cabin in the woods this weekend? And she's like, yeah, yeah. So I took her. She took one look at it and she was like, take me back to campus immediately.
Oh no. Oh no.
She was not a hippie type.
No. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Oh my
Anyway,
God.
that's my story.
Wow. Okay. I love it. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about meditation because for for one, I like to talk about it, but two, I think it's really important for people, like we talked about, to understand what it is, because either people watch some YouTube and they have an idea, or they put this really big, grandiose expectation, like I need to be, in meditation for an hour, like all these kind of things. But I think a lot of that misses the point of the meditation as is. So, what's your take on how do you even go about explaining this to people who don't have a bunch of background or understand any of it? Like, where do you start from square one?
Well, usually I just don't say a word. I just show them, and then I'm like, and then they do it, and then they're meditating. Done. It takes a minute, 2 minutes maybe. Now, the person's intent for starting meditation is theirs. I had my intents when I first started. I wanted to feel better. I wanted to heal. Maybe I wanted to feel special, part of some special group. You know what I'm saying? But those intentions change. So all meditation it's a spiritual thing, but it's more of just setting certain basic conditions that already exist in nature. Because when you do it long enough, you may realize that everything's spiritual, not just there's no separation between your actual life, your ordinary life, and spirituality. I'm at the point now where everything is meditation, everything is spiritual, everything's part of the universe, from the smallest tiny little thing like a metal hook. Not to get off subject, but I volunteer with senior citizens and I drive this huge bus. It's hard. It's hard work. And one time, this woman who has dementia, generally she mumbles. Nothing she ever says makes any sense. But this one day, I was strapping her in with her wheelchair on the bus, and there's these big metal hooks you have to use to keep the wheelchair secure and not tip over while you're driving. Anyway, I was like hot and I had all these people and I was rushed and I was stressed out and I was like, oh, these hooks. And she said, plain as day, Mark. I was like, whoa, because usually she's mumbling. She said, Mark. I was shocked she knew my name. She said, if you give those hooks the love and attention that they're begging for, they'll work with you. I was like, whoa. Right?
Wow.
So
Wow.
I was like, I got to listen. This is the universe. And I looked down at the hooks and damn it, if those hooks, when I paid attention to them, if they didn't react, then I was like, whoa, man, even inanimate objects are alive, even they are spiritual. So to me now, everything is alive.
Mhm.
But when we first sit down, we can't expect that. We can't expect anything. And that's why I think Suzuki Roshi's book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, is great, because it says just do it without any expectations, without any goals. Whatever your intent is now will change if you continue to do it. So all I try to do, like I wrote a 350-page book, and every 20 pages I say, please just put this garbage down and follow the instructions in the back. Just do it. Just
Mhm.
do it. Because that's the key. The thing about meditate, I start people at 5 minutes, not 30 minutes. And people, once they start doing the 5 minutes, they always want to jump ahead. They're like, well, I did a half hour. And I'm like, why? 5 minutes in the beginning is plenty. And meditation's about balance. It's a gradual process. It's really hard to explain what happens when you do it long term. So you don't want to jump ahead. 5 minutes at first will start changing. Well, some people say it rewires the brain. I mean, I stay away from anything that has to do with science and medicine because I don't know. I don't want to start being a pseudo scientist and mixing spirituality with, sciences and practices that I really don't know. We have to be careful there. So I don't know what it does, and I don't really care what it does, but 5
Right.
minutes at first is plenty because I see it a lot. Like I'll work with someone and from 5 minutes for 2 weeks straight without missing a day. That's where I start them. If they can do that, 5 minutes for 2 straight weeks without missing a day, then they prove to me that I can work with them because they passed that kind of boot camp. Out of thousands of people I showed, not many people make it. You would think 5 minutes for 2 weeks, how easy? It's not easy because, your mind will start getting in the way. You'll start saying, well, what's the point? Well, what's after the 5 minutes for 2 weeks? Well, maybe I'll do an hour. And then, so it's the Harvard honor system. I don't think I've ever had anyone lie and say they did it because not many people can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Very few. So I would say 5 minutes for 2 weeks, but that's more than enough. But I've had a lot of people make mistakes where they go further along and they've been meditating. 6 months is kind of a point where other people start to notice usually. Like they're like, what's up with you, dude? You're like, you're like calm. Your leg's not moving 1,000 times a minute. You seem different. And that's why I always tell people, don't get excited. You can't go out after 6 months and start teaching meditation. Don't start preaching. Don't be a born again Buddhist, a born again meditator. There's nothing worse. If you start feeling better and you start telling your family and friends how wonderful meditation is and that they should meditate, they're going to think you stopped taking your meds or you joined a cult. So this is kind of something you want to do at home. If you expect other people to appreciate what you're doing, that's not a good thing because they've known you maybe a long time, So it took me a good year of being stable to really believe it myself. Like anxiety would kick in or a panic attack, and I would think, oh, here we go again. It's going to spin out of control. After a few years, I started to believe it. After a few more years, the people who knew me started to believe it. And really, the key to meditation is not needing anyone else's approval or not expecting to be appreciated for your hard work. It's just doing it by yourself in your house. You take a little spot aside. I say stare at the wall because in Zen meditation, Zazen, we keep our eyes open.
Mm-hmm.
And you're basically setting conditions for peace. You're limiting your sensory stimulation all the way. Like if you meditate out in nature or you do a guided meditation or something like that, you're being stimulated. I have nothing against guided meditation, so I'm not judging it. I'm just saying in this particular meditation that I'm talking about, it's setting the conditions in nature for you to naturally start seeing what's moving in here and in here and in your whole body. And then if you do that long enough, chances are you're going to start seeing that all this in here is tied to something out there. And that's where it starts to get really cool. But that takes a lot of hard work, And it doesn't mean once you come out of yourself and start seeing the whole world as spiritual and beautiful that every day you're going to walk around in bliss.
No.
Did you ever see someone who looks like this? I have so much gratitude. Roshi, such and such, guru, swami. As soon as I see that, man, I'm like, oh, whew, run. And that's my suggestion for your audience. If anybody's telling you someone else is enlightened, run. Because an enlightened person, the real enlightened people I have met, first of all, usually they're not Buddhist. It's like Bob who sweeps up at the bowling alley, who we would overlook because he's not part of the in crowd, right? So enlightened people generally aren't in the spotlight. But if they are, they make it perfectly clear to their students that they are human. They will screw up on purpose if they have to. Like sometimes I say little nasty things if I think somebody's looking at me like, I'll be like, what is you, I'll say something Philly to wake them up. You know what I'm saying? So all an enlightened person realizes is that They can be themselves. They can be comfortable in their own skin, you know? They realize that everything's equal and anything they achieve, everything achieves. You know, they realize certain things. And and one of the things they realize is that their enlightenment isn't necessarily their own doing. Yeah, they were just in the right place at the right time. Sure, they worked. Sure, they put in work. They sat in the posture, faced all that pain, and somehow moved a little past it. But all enlightenment is pretty much acting naturally, like,
Hmm.
not telling yourself a million stories, not
Right.
judging, not, it's kind of just like appreciating everything. And anybody can do that. Yeah. So we say in Zen, as soon as you assume the Zazen position and go quiet and still, you're enlightened. There's nowhere else to go.
Hmm.
And if you do it repetitively over and over and over again, it's kind of like riding a bike. You can start saying, well, how does this balance work? And if
Right.
you start overthinking it, you're going to wobble over and fall and hurt yourself. So it's basically meditation is just like riding a bike, or if you're a golfer, hitting the ball over and over. If you're a basketball player, I call it, some people call it mindfulness. I call it bodiness.
Hmm.
Just, let your body teach you. But that doesn't make much sense
Right.
until you put your body in a balanced position. And I say, like, the analogy I love the most is the seed. If you plant a seed in balanced conditions and don't mess with it too much, leave it alone, it'll grow.
Right.
And an olive tree, which is the universal symbol of peace, takes 60 years to bear fruit. Right? So when you meditate, you're not going to bear fruit right away. Stop thinking about fruit. Just plant the seed and get out of the way. And how do we get out of the way? We get out of the way with our minds. We drop the expectations. We drop the need to be part of a tribe. you know, if you start acting naturally, you'll become part of a tribe. People will think even birds and trees will like you. You'll become the whole universe will be your tribe. You'll never be alone, even when you are alone, because you'll realize little Mark here is just a temporal expression of the universe itself or God. But we have to be careful in spiritual circles. We tend to de-emphasize the individual and emphasize the non-mark. Well, if I'm stuck in the non-mark and my kids are done school and I don't pick them up, I'm going to get a little call from the principal saying, "Where the hell are you?"
Yep.
So sometimes I got to be Mark. I got to be Dad. Sometimes I can be the universe. The key to all of this, and the reason we put ourselves in the balanced meditation position, is to know when. Both are real, both are equal. It's not the universe, non Mark, being one with a pigeon all the time. It's this knowing when to think expansively or big. Like somebody irritates you at work. Might be a good time to get out of Mark and get into big universe. And then maybe Mark won't be so irritated. So it's just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And like I said, I wrote 350 pages of back and forth, back and forth. I try to
Yeah.
show people.
Yeah, and what I love that you bring up so well is like it becomes a life practice. Because that was one of the big shifters for me, is thinking a lot of meditation happens off the cushion as well. So life is a meditation, and realizing that was a pretty big shift for me too, of like, oh, cooking is a meditation. Like doing my work is a form of meditation. Is
Yeah.
It's not just sitting on the cushion for the 5 minutes, is it in order to really embrace the whole lifestyle of it, you implement it into everything that you do, which is really, really cool. I think it's a big shift, and I'm still human too and working on it. But it is a cool shift to think about it that way
Well,
instead
that's
of
when it
just
gets
that traditional
interesting.
view.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's when it gets interesting, when it follows you.
Mhm.
I call it further practice.
Yeah.
So it's like everything starts to be implemented into your practice. Cooking, there's a great book by Ed Brown, the Tassajara Cookbook. Ed
Mm,
Brown's a cool guy,
okay.
um, that talks about that. If anybody's interested, a little plug for Ed.
Nice.
But yeah, everything, even when you're feel separated and you don't practice, it's practice
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
you're kind of learning from that. So it all becomes one beautiful pot of stirrings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
and then you realize that you can cook whatever the heck you want. Like once
Yeah.
you become relative balance, like I said, I don't like to get into science, but balance or equilibrium is life. Like the sun and the earth have to be the perfect distance, the perfect size, the perfect age. They had to form a relationship. All life is equilibrium. It's diverse energies and forces coming together to create something new. Well, when you put yourself in that position, you're basically creating, it's like an art form, really. You're basically going back to the singularity point or the nothing before existence. I don't want to get too heavy, too big. And you're beginning again, like you have the opportunity to create something new every day if you'd like. And then you realize, man, I can create whatever I want, any kind of life I want. And you start to see your culture, you start to see traditions and even family traits and even your instincts and your genetic propensities and your habits and things, political trends and conspiracy theories and your country and even your civilization. You start to see it as kind of, you see it different. You see it as constantly changing and very temporal, as well as yourself. You see yourself like that. Now, that's tricky business. You have to be careful when you get into that kind of thinking and feeling, because then you can start thinking, well, I'm up here and the Republicans or the Democrats or whoever is down here. And I'm aware and they're not. And my family just is not aware and they're not aware, but I am aware. No good. It's no
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
All this is temporary, man. It's all temporary. That's why we should appreciate it. Because we're
Mhm.
this like tiny little pocket of balance in this endless, chaotically violent universe. And no matter what we say about our country right now, or the way we were raised, or materialism, and I say this in the book, the reason nature allowed me to be free is because I'm not a trust fund baby like the folks on Maui. I didn't get brought into a family business and I wasn't expected to, carry a legacy at Harvard. Yeah. And then on the other hand, I wasn't born poverty stricken, struggling in violence. I mean, there was violence, but it wasn't, at home so much. Now I'm middle class. I have n- just enough, maybe more than enough money where I don't have to worry anymore. I'm right in that little pocket of balance, right? If I was too wealthy, forget it. Impossible. Maybe not impossible. I don't know. I don't want to, speak for them, but the wealthy people I have met, impossible. And the poverty stricken people I have met also probably, there's always exceptions,
Mhm.
but it's
Mhm.
that little pocket, the middle class still exists, even though everything's so expensive and we're all struggling, I think. We're still in a pretty secure pocket, regardless of the climate in the country at this time. And we really ought to appreciate that opportunity because there are parts of the world where that will never be an opportunity. There's parts of this country where that'll never be an opportunity. And if we have that opportunity, now's the time to stop and appreciate it before it's too late. And working with seniors, I see it all the time, man. I've learned so much being with people in their deathbed and being with people at the end of their lives. And, they say spare the rod. for the child, like hit your kid. Well, the ones that did that with their kids, really, they hit themselves because they die alone,
Hmm.
So we don't want to die alone. But I think if you meditate, it's kind of impossible to die alone. But
Yeah.
that's a big claim. Hey, I'm not. I don't know what'll happen at the moment of truth.
Right.
I
Yes.
think it was Ram Dass. I have a funny story about him on Maui, real quick.
Oh, yes, please.
Well, I thought Ram Dass, the guru, right? I'll hand him my infant child, and he should be like if somebody handed me an infant, I'd be like, "Whoa, little baby, what are you doing?" Well, Ram Dass was not happy, and he looked very, very,
Oh.
very, very uncomfortable.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
But in hindsight, he was having health problems. But the one thing I really do love what he said was when he had his stroke, all his guru stuff went out the window and he was scared to death. So I think that was really great that he put that out there, although people don't tend to focus on that part of his teachings. But when the moment comes, all of my balance stuff could go out the window. So we don't even want to have any expectations for our death.
Yeah.
I don't. I want to
Yeah.
be as open and as balanced as I can, because that's where we're all headed. Not to bring us down.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just how it goes. It's just a
Yes.
circle of things, how it goes. But
Yes.
yeah. Well, man, I feel like we could talk a long time about a lot of stuff, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, it's so amazing and so helpful. And I think bring such a good realistic perspective to meditation and what the practice looks like and how to get started. And even I tell it all the time, 5 minutes is more than enough. Like we try to overdo it all the time. So even that takeaway is so powerful for people to hear and know. And we will make sure that we definitely get your book and website because it's really cool title, stareatthewall.org. Like that's pretty fun. Like um we'll get all that linked in there too, but then so
Cool.
that people can dive into your book and learn more about this because man, it makes a profound difference in your life when you start to do this and you can do it and it is
Yeah,
hard work like you
it
said and
is.
it's not easy and it can be very uncomfortable at times.
Well, I think that pretty much describes the book. I tell people, have a bottle of Excedrin nearby when you start reading. I wouldn't classify it as an easy read, and it definitely has some, you know, bad feelings in it, and it's good stuff.
But it's real, which I think is important. Yes.
Well, it's
Yeah.
as real as I could muster up. I think it almost killed me. I'm not joking, man. I'm still rebounding, trying to get back to simplicity and balance because writing that book, trying to, most people, successful, powerful people, they say, never let anyone know what you're thinking. This is the opposite. 150 pages where I just lay my mind out for the whole world.
Mhm.
It's
Mm.
a little bit scary.
Yeah.
It's a little bit scary to do that, but I did it just to maybe help somebody take a look at their own mind and maybe, slow it down a little.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and then all
if it
this
helps
work
one person,
it's
it
exactly.
the book
Exactly.
helps me. Like
Yeah.
I go back, I'm like, I can't believe I wrote this. But I'm like, "Oh, that's good stuff?"
Yeah.
So now I
Yeah.
have my own little I can go back to center without having to rely on anyone else, which I think everyone should do that for themselves.
Mhm.
Write out their mind as it is. Doesn't nobody else needs to see it. I was just, wild enough to
To let the people in, yes.
Whew, I hope nobody reads this.
Well, I'm sure
Goodbye.
everyone's gonna wanna read it now. That's
Oh,
a good
no.
pitch.
Oh,
Perfect pitch.
gosh. Oh.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, and thank you for the work that you are doing out in the world. And I know it makes a big difference. And even if it's just one person, then it was totally worth it. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for taking the time and putting your heart into this and your work. And it was just a real honor to have you as a guest, and so fun to listen to you.
Yeah, just remember you're doing the same kind of work by putting yourself out there, doing this, because this is a podcast that isn't really selling anything, so it may not be, I don't even know who the big podcasters are these days, but it's good stuff because it brings people together that would have never been brought together before. Yeah, so it's really good. Keep going.
Thank you.
No expectations. Just keep doing it. Keep doing it.
I just show up.
Yeah, just keep showing up.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Well, you were so welcome. You're so welcome. And thank you to everyone who was listening to our conversation today. And let's get out there and support Mark and his work as well too. Check out the website, check out his book. And if you found our conversation interesting or valuable, or somebody that could use this information in their lives, please share the episode. We appreciate all of your likes and subscribes. It makes a big difference for us and the work that we're doing. So thank you to everyone who sat around the fire with us today, and excited to see you again on the next episode.